My name is Eileen, and on my 33rd birthday, I arrived 15 minutes early to a dinner that never happened. The table was set for 6, but only one seat was occupied mine. I wore heels I hated and a dress that whispered effort without pleading. There was a soft chill in the Denver air, the kind that makes people lean into each other. I had no one to lean into. The skyline burned gold behind glass as the hostess led me to the table. She smiled. "Party of 6, I nodded. Her voice didn't shake. Mine almost did. The table was perfect. Polished cutlery. A single candle that flickered like it believed someone would care to notice. I sat facing the door. That was intentional. I wanted to see them walk in. I wanted to believe they would. When the waiter asked if I wanted to wait before ordering, I replied too quickly. "They're just running late." He nodded like he'd heard that before too often to care. I checked my phone. 6:47 p.m. Nothing. I told myself not to spiral. Zia was always late on purpose. Curtis rarely looked at clocks, and Mom, well, if it wasn't about someone else, she usually needed reminding. I glanced around the restaurant. Background laughter, clinking glasses. Life continued as it always does when you're waiting for people who've already decided you don't matter. I'd chosen this place because it was neutral ground, not too grand, not too casual. Just intentional. A message hidden in ambiance. You matter enough for me to plan this. Then my phone lit up. A message from my mother. "You're not our priority right now. Enjoy your dinner." 13 words. Sharp. Practiced. Clean as a scalpel. They didn't forget. They chose to leave me out. They used my money to throw a party for my brother on my birthday. How do you come back from that? Or more honestly, why would you want to? I stared at the message until the words burned into my mind. The waiter returned with a neatly wrapped box. "Someone dropped this off earlier," he said. "From your family." I managed a small, restrained smile, the kind you reserve for strangers when your dignity's bleeding beneath the surface. I already knew what was inside. My fingers peeled the paper slowly like unwrapping a wound. A pale blue silk scarf, the same one I'd given Mom last Christmas. I remembered the tiny snag near the edge. Her ring had caught it. The stitching was still mine. Even the card was mine. They hadn't even bothered to replace it, just wrote over my message from last year. A ghost of my handwriting still visible beneath the generic happy birthday from all of us. The weight settled in. A cold, silent gravity. Not rage, not sorrow. Something denser, more enduring. I didn't cry. I didn't call. I just stared into the candlelight and let the silence confirm what words had made clear. All my life, I've been the optional seat at the table. The extra. The filler. Birthdays, where I was the one holding the camera, never in the photos. Celebrations where my name got lost behind applause for someone else. But this night wasn't like those. This one was mine. And they didn't just forget, they declined. Eventually, I reached into my purse and pulled out a sticky note meant for groceries. I scribbled 5 words. "Thank you. No more seats." I left a 20 under the plate, more than enough for wine, and wasted grace, and walked out. I didn't say goodbye. Didn't check my phone. Let them call the ghosts if they wanted company. When I got home, the city was drowning in its own silence. I dropped my purse, peeled off my shoes, and tossed the sticky note, the second one, the real one, onto the counter beside a fruit bowl I never used. The apartment still smelled like hairspray and quiet expectations. I didn't turn on the lights. I didn't need to. The glow from the city was enough to navigate around the ruins. I poured a glass of water I wouldn't finish and sat on the edge of the couch like I was still expecting someone to knock. The phone buzzed again. I let it. Maybe it was a reminder. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was the echo of a life I no longer wanted to chase. I didn't check. Because that night, for the first time, I understood something terrifying and freeing. The absence isn't the wound. It's the clarity. It was just a vibration, an Instagram notification. My thumb hesitated, knowing the kind of damage a single photo could do. But I tapped anyway. The image unfolded slowly like it knew it had power. And then it hit me. There they were. Zia, Velma, Curtis, even Uncle Ray, the family ghost we stopped inviting after he twisted Dad's will into a joke. They were standing outside the Marina restaurant in Boulder, radiant, relaxed, holding champagne like it had always been meant for them. Curtis stood in the center, arms flung wide like he'd conquered something. Dangling from his fingers was a key ring, the motorcycle emblem catching the light. The caption read, "Celebrating the Dreamer." He finally made it happen. My breath caught. I zoomed in. Velma was wearing the pale blue scarf, the one they'd just given back to me hours ago, the one I had bought, wrapped, and remembered. And Curtis on his wrist wore the same luxury watch he'd sent me a picture of 2 months ago. "Is this too much?" he asked. I told him yes. He told me he couldn't afford it. And yet, here it was, glinting like truth exposed. I put the phone down and stared at the blank screen. My reflection stared back, quiet, hollow. Then I opened my banking app. Tuesday, a transfer. 1,500 to Curtis. He'd cried on the phone, said it was for rent, said they were going to throw him out. Eileen, I'm scared. He wasn't scared. He was celebrating. I let the phone slip from my fingers. It landed softly. Nothing in me screamed. Nothing in me broke. I just sat there in stillness, like someone hovering above her own body, watching her trust rot from the inside out. They hadn't just excluded me. They used me, funded their joy with my concern, toasted their closeness with my absence. I stood up slowly and walked to the table where my laptop still waited. It was open from the night before, when I'd searched for dinner reservations with just the right number of seats. I clicked into my documents and started a new one. I titled it, Support Unreciprocated. I typed out what I could remember. Every dollar I had handed over to keep them afloat. Car payments, mortgage relief, emergency fixes. None of it acknowledged. None of it ever reciprocated. At the bottom of the page, I pasted the photo from Zia's post. Their celebration, funded by my fear. Then I opened another tab and searched for selective family amnesia. I needed to know if someone else had named this quiet cruelty. The phone buzzed again. A forwarded voicemail from Velma. I didn't open it. I stared at the screen as headlights from the street moved across the window like a slow confession. Somewhere, someone was being held. Somewhere, someone was being chosen. But not here. Not in this silence. I whispered to no one. This is what they chose. Let them live with it. Morning came without warning. No alarm. Just light pressing through the blinds like a question I couldn't avoid. I sat up slowly. The apartment was still neat, still expectant, like it was waiting for someone who never arrived. I didn't check my phone. I looked instead at the corner of the room where my suitcase sat upright, still packed. That bag was for a weekend I never took with people who wanted me there. I canceled because Velma had a pipe leak. She said she called Curtis first, but you know how boys are. So I went. I missed Joy. I said, "It's okay, Mom. I'll come." But I wouldn't say it again. Not now. Not ever. It was never okay. I just never learned how to say that at the kitchen table without making the air too heavy to breathe. So I smiled, nodded, and passed the salt. That's what they wanted. Quiet compliance. This morning, I opened my laptop and clicked on the spreadsheet I'd created the night before. I added a new tab and gave it a name that finally felt honest, emotional overdrafts. I began typing not just the dollars and wire transfers, but the withdrawals made from pieces of myself. The canceled New Mexico trip when Curtis's car broke down. The Thanksgiving dinner I catered when no one reimbursed me or even mentioned it. The decorations I bought for Zia's baby shower at the last minute, thanked on Facebook like a stranger. Velma's emergency dental bill, the one she swore she'd pay me back for. She didn't. None of them ever did. I didn't cry as I typed. I didn't tremble. That was the difference between sadness and clarity. Sadness folds you in. Clarity holds you upright and asks for evidence. My mind wandered. I thought of Zia's wedding, where I was seated in the back next to a catering intern and an ex-boyfriend of someone I didn't know. When it came time for the toast, she lifted her glass and said, "To my amazing family," then paused and called me Aileen, drawing out the I like I was an afterthought. At Christmas Eve dinner, Velma had asked me to help in the kitchen real quick just as the rest of them gathered around the tree for photos. I came out 20 minutes later with roasted vegetables. Uncle Ray glanced at me and said, surprised, "Oh, you were here! I was always there! I just didn't count." The difference was invisible, but sharp. My phone buzzed. A message from Marla, a friend from college. "Hey, just wanted to give you a heads up. My aunt ran into your mom yesterday. She said Velma told people you're exaggerating things, making drama. Said you've always been a bit much." I put the phone down gently as if the message might shatter. That was the new story then. Not just forgotten, but rewritten. My silence wasn't passive. It was ammunition. I thought of every birthday I showed up to out of guilt. Every event where I took the photos instead of being in them. Every time I gave what I didn't have because it was easier than saying no. I found a photo on my phone from 2 years ago. A holiday dinner. Everyone was smiling. Velma had a wine glass midair. Zia wore a red satin dress. Curtis already stained with gravy. I wasn't in the frame. I remembered why. I was the one who took it. I stared at the image like it owed me something, like it might open and pull me in. It didn't, because I had always been behind the lens, never in the picture. I whispered it to the empty room, because I was the one framing it. Monday came, wrapped in gray, the wind sharp with a feeling that something was about to give. I brewed coffee out of habit, not want. The silence in my apartment didn't soothe me, it dared me to face it. I answered a few work emails, just enough to prove I was still tethered to something, and then I opened the browser. I logged into the mortgage account Velma and I had shared the responsibility since Dad passed. I only meant to check that my last payment had gone through. Just routine. It always starts like that. Small. Then I saw it. A new document linked to the property profile. A revised ownership agreement. My name, which had been there for 3 years, was gone. I clicked download. The PDF opened. Filed 4 weeks ago. The new deed listed Velma and Curtis as co-owners. There was no signature line for me, no request, no notification, just a silent removal. I grabbed my phone and called the county clerk's office. After a maze of hold music and robotic transfers, I reached someone, a woman with a calm voice and tired cadence. I gave her the file number. She checked. "Yes, ma'am," she said. "That revision was submitted in person. It's been notarized and processed." I kept my voice level. "Was there a signature from me on file?" She paused. The pause lasted too long. Then she came back. "Yes, there's a signature. It says, Eileen M. Jennings. Looks tidy, but no ID attached. Just the signature page." I inhaled slowly. "I never signed that," I said. She was quiet. Then she replied, a new tension rising in her tone. "If you believe fraud is involved, I suggest contacting a property attorney." And just like that, it wasn't just a dinner I hadn't been invited to. It was my name, my presence, my place erased. I thanked the clerk and ended the call. Fraud. That word hovered in the air like dust, and behind it, I could almost see my mother's hand on the pen, calmly drawing a line through my name. Not an oversight, a clean removal. This time, they didn't just forget me, they made it official. I minimized the window and sat in silence, trying to slow my breath. My eyes landed on the edge of a folder on my desktop, its corner barely visible. I clicked. Inside was a flyer from last year's senior community fundraiser. I remembered that night well. I had anonymously covered the event when the city slashed their budget mid-year. Velma showed up in pearls and a pastoral suit, gave a moving speech that brought 2 board members to tears. She accepted the plaque on behalf of the Jennings family. The newsletter the next month called her the beating heart of the family legacy. My name wasn't anywhere. Not in the caption, not in the footnotes. I dragged the newly downloaded deed into the folder and renamed it Not Forgotten, Just Ignored. Then I took screenshots of the newsletter article, the staged event photo of Velma, shaking hands with the mayor, smiling like she'd earned every inch of the spotlight. I pasted them into a document titled Pattern. I didn't call. I didn't text. I didn't ask for an explanation. Instead, I drafted an email to a real estate attorney a coworker had once mentioned during a lunch break. The message was short and precise. I attached the files, outlined the dates, and sent it before I could talk myself out of it. The moment I hit send, I felt something click into place inside me. It wasn't triumph, it was relief. Like finally removing a splinter I hadn't realized had been poisoning me for months. Scrolling back through the PDF, I paused on the final line, all errors in agreement verified. They didn't even pretend to verify. Didn't blink. Didn't check. They just removed me and assumed I wouldn't notice. I wasn't forgotten, I whispered to the glowing screen. I was deleted. Outside, the sky shifted to that blue-gray wash that arrives just before night falls, the kind of light that softens everything except the truth. Long shadows stretched across my living room floor, trembling against the legs of the coffee table. I hadn't changed clothes. The microwave meal sat half-eaten on the table. I sat on the couch, frozen, staring at the muted television like it might answer the question no one else would ask. The silence didn't comfort me anymore. It performed itself too deliberate, like a drum roll before the drop. Then a knock. Soft, but sure. Not hesitant. It was the kind of knock that didn't ask, it warned. I opened the door, already braced for impact. And there she was. Velma, holding a generic gift bag, the kind you grab last minute from a pharmacy aisle. Tissue paper puffed out like it had something to prove. Her face was stretched tight into a smile so rehearsed it looked painful. Thought we could talk, she said. Like adults. I didn't invite her in. She walked past me anyway. Of course she did. That was always Velma rewriting the rules as she entered the room. She perched on the edge of the couch like it might stain her hands folded neatly, as if being here was a favor. I stood. I wasn't going to sit just to make her feel taller. I know how things looked, she started, smoothing her palms against her jeans. But we thought maybe you needed some space. After dinner. I blinked once. After dinner, I said slowly. You mean when you didn't show up? She ignored it. Kept talking. I think there were misunderstandings. And well, you're not always the easiest person to what I asked. My voice wasn't loud, but it was enough to make her stop breathing for half a second. To be around, she said, exhaling hard through her nose. Then the mask slipped. You're so sensitive. You always take everything personally. Like the world is out to get you. There it was, the old refrain, the family script, that I was the problem. That my expectations were the issue. That I was too much, too intense, too inconvenient. But I didn't flinch. I wasn't angry, not in the way she wanted me to be. I looked her in the eye and said it clearly, calmly. No. I just stopped lying for you. Her face twitched. Not a smile, not quite a frown, just the smallest tell the way her eyes avoided mine, the way her shoulders pulled back like she was trying to shrink without moving. "I didn't come here to apologize," she said finally. "I just didn't want people thinking we abandoned you." Of course not. It wasn't guilt that brought her here. It was image management. She placed the gift bag on the table like a sacrificial token, her expression stiff with effort. I picked it up, walked to the kitchen, and dropped it gently into the trash. Not with rage, not with drama, with finality. When I turned back around, she was still watching me frozen in place, like something unfinished. I walked past her to the kitchen drawer, opened it without urgency, and pulled out the folder I had prepared days ago. Not out of hope, out of precision, out of knowing this moment would come eventually. I handed her a single page, clean, labeled. A financial breakdown of every cent I had contributed to this so-called family over the last 5 years. Rent, groceries, utility bills, emergency bailouts. Every line was dated, documented, untouched by exaggeration. No one ever paid a dime back. Velma stared at the sheet. Her face didn't twitch, but her fingers tightened around the paper like it might cut her if she let go. I met her eyes, voice quiet but deliberate. "This," I said, "is who you've been talking about behind my back." She opened her mouth, searching for a defense, but the words didn't arrive. I didn't stop. "Next time someone asks where I've been," I said, my voice steady, "tell them the truth. Tell them I stopped paying to be invisible." Her shoulders slumped, a small shift, like the mask was slipping. She stood, adjusted her coat, stiff and slow, like dressing herself in old power. At the door, she hesitated, one hand on the knob, her voice lowered into a mutter, brittle and sharp. "You'll regret this. Once you're alone." I walked her to the door, closed it softly behind her, turned the lock with no flourish, then leaned my forehead against the wood, breathing in the shape of the silence she left behind. Not grief, not triumph, just release. "I've already been alone," I whispered. "This time, it's by choice." Friday arrived without fanfare, slipping into the hours like an old friend who knew better than to knock. Outside, the air had turned thin, that first whisper of winter riding just beneath the wind. I hadn't shut the balcony door. I let the cold creep in sharp and honest, my own quiet rebellion. It stung, but it told the truth, and that was more than I could say for most people. I sat cross-legged on the couch, barefoot, a throw blanket around my shoulders, like armor I didn't owe anyone. A glass of wine rested beside me untouched. I didn't want to blur this moment. I wanted to feel it in full, clear, raw. My thoughts drifted back to Velma's voice, her words, the look on her face, but this time, none of it pierced me. "You'll regret this once you're alone." I heard it again. Let it echo. Let it fade. Alone wasn't the punishment they thought it was. It was where I'd always returned to rebuild, where I sewed up the rips they left behind. Alone was never the enemy. It was the answer. I stood across the room and closed the balcony door. The latch clicked into place with a sound that felt like punctuation. Final. Clean. A door that didn't need to reopen. Then my phone lit up. The family group chat, still alive, still thriving, apparently untouched by absence. It had been weeks since I opened it, maybe longer. The messages rolled in like a slow bleed. "Emergency call tonight, 8:00 p.m. sharp. No drama this time. Let's try to keep it civil and productive." Then Zia chimed in, "Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood." The chat had a new name, Family First, followed by a broken heart emoji and a waving hand. Not a removal. No, that would require a spine. Instead, they just kept talking around me, as if I'd walked out of the room and no one noticed, as if I never belonged in the photo to begin with. I stared at the thread. My thumb hovered. Then I hit mute, then delete. Not out of anger, not revenge, just peace. That quiet kind that doesn't need a witness. I opened my inbox searching for something, anything to pull me out of that noise. And there it was, a new message from the attorney. Subject line, final title adjustment confirmed. I clicked. The email was brief. Surgical. All title removals have been processed. Your name no longer appears on the joint property effective immediately. No ceremony, no apology, just a fact. Cold. Final. I let out a slow breath. My body didn't jolt with victory. My heart didn't surge. It just settled. And for once, that was enough. My heart didn't race. There was no thrill in it, no surge of justice. This wasn't triumph. This was extraction. A slow, careful removal from a sickness I had spent too long calling family. I moved with quiet precision, tying off the final threads of their reach. I unsubscribed from the grocery delivery service that Velma had siphoned into her life like a tax I owed her. Crates of overpriced snacks delivered weekly to a house I wasn't welcome in. Next, the auto-pays, the shared streaming accounts, the photo cloud, the saved passwords. One by one, I severed every digital tether they'd used to anchor themselves to me. I wasn't just stepping back, I was erasing my footprints from every hallway they still walked without ever looking behind. Then I wrote the message. Not a farewell, not even a confrontation. Just one sentence handled what I needed. No further responses required. I sent it into the muted group thread like a ship cast into fog. No expectation of return. On my desktop, I created a new folder. I named it Closure is Mine. Now, inside it, I dragged the revised title deed, the receipts, the screenshots, the message thread where Zia casually suggested I skip Christmas, the email where Velma denied borrowing my emergency fund, then Venmo'd the exact amount to herself 3 hours later. I didn't plan to reopen the folder, but it needed to exist. Not for them. For me. Because when people try to rewrite your story, you better be able to show them the original. I passed the hallway mirror on the way to my bedroom. Something made me stop. I hadn't really looked at myself in days. I stepped closer. My reflection stared back. Same eyes, same face. But the posture was new. I didn't look like someone trying to win her way back in. I didn't look like someone begging to stay. I looked like someone who had survived the storm and realized she was still standing. You broke me, once I whispered. The words didn't shake. But this time, I'm the one walking away. I turned off the light, let the room go dark. And for the first time in months, I wasn't afraid of it. I welcomed it like peace. Saturday morning came soft, unhurried. The kind of silence that feels like a room finally breathing again. Sunlight filtered through the blinds in slivers, slow and hesitant, like it was testing if it was still welcome here. I didn't reach for my phone. Not first. I brewed coffee, 2 scoops of bold roast I'd hidden from guests. I watered the plants at the window and spoke to them like old friends. I pulled out the book I'd promised myself I'd finish, a quiet collection of essays on stillness. I'd barely touched it. And yet, for a moment, just one, I believed I might build a life like that. One that moved slowly. One that didn't orbit guilt or obligation or noise. A self-authored life. A life not performed, but lived. Then the phone lit up. 1 missed call, then 3, then 7. The group chat was back, rebranded again. It had once been called Emergency Mortgage Crisis, then Unity Over Blood. Now it read Family Unity SOS. They were spiraling. I didn't even need to open it to know. They were trying to plug a hole in a ship they drilled themselves. Messages scrolled in like warnings. Let's talk tonight. No judgment. Just solutions. Time to come together. We can fix this. We need to regroup. Then the one that made my fingers stop moving. Zia, let's be real. Don't invite her this year. She ruins the mood. I stared at the screen. Her profile photo hadn't changed. Still, that airbrushed Thanksgiving shot taken in front of the fireplace. The house I'd helped pay for. The photo I had taken. The one where I had been cropped out. I didn't respond. I didn't even finish reading. I took a breath, took screenshots of everything, and quietly moved them into the folder my attorney told me to start keeping. Defamation log. NZO01. It was growing faster than I expected, but I didn't spiral. I reached instead for something else. A weathered book from the bottom shelf, one my dad had given me years ago. It wasn't about law, or finances, or survival. It was about stillness. Halfway through the pages, I found a bent corner. Tucked inside, thin and creased, was a slip of paper. My father's handwriting, steady loving. You are the one who gives without asking. Don't let them take that from you. Giving isn't weakness, baby girl. It's strength. But strength must be honored, or it turns into burden, and burden breaks. I sat there holding the letter like a thread sewn back into me. It wasn't sadness that stung my eyes, it was recognition. The quiet ache of finally being seen. Even in silence. I stood, walked to the photo wall, all those moments frozen in time. But not mine. Not really. Zia's engagement party. I paid for the catering, cleaned up alone after midnight while they laughed in the car. Gone. Curtis, holding his newborn in the hospital, the same hospital I wired the deposit for when his insurance fell through. Gone. The Sedona trip Velma claimed credit for the one I budgeted and booked down to the Airbnb linens I had the receipts. Gone. One by one, I pulled the photos off the wall. They clinked as they fell into the trash bag, small echoes of things I had propped up too long. All except one. A photo of me and Dad. Just the two of us laughing on the porch, summer light tangled in our hair. It felt like a truth that didn't need to be explained. I didn't toss it. I taped it inside my closet door, hidden and safe. That one I kept. The rest belonged to a chapter I had no intention of rereading. Back in the living room, I glanced at my phone. Zia had posted again, a photo of the family, dim lighting, tight crop around the dinner table. Caption: even when someone disappears, family still stands together. The comments lined up like soldiers. Hope you're okay. You've always been the strong one. She's probably going through something. Just pray for her. I didn't cry. I took screenshots. I attached them to an email titled Defamation Log. So you won, and sent it to my attorney. One line in the body for the case file. Then I powered off the phone, placed it face down on the table like a period at the end of a sentence that no longer needed to be read. The silence that followed wasn't empty. It was mine, and it didn't scare me. They wanted collapse, quiet, ashes. What they got was precision. My voice didn't shake as I said it aloud. What they're getting is a controlled detonation. For the first time in years, I felt free. Not just from them, but toward something, toward what came next. No more adjusting the tablecloth. No more stepping out of frame. No more pretending that silence was kindness. I wasn't vanishing. I was reclaiming. One photo, one folder, one truth at a time. I pulled out of the parking lot just before sunset. The small store-bought chocolate cake sat beside me in its plastic container. A single candle taped to the lid. It wasn't fancy. It didn't need to be. Next to it, a worn paperback, All the Pretty Horses, Dad's favorite. I'd found it last night in a box labeled Winter Coats. Somehow, it felt right to bring it along. The drive from Denver to Boulder isn't long, but that evening, it felt like crossing a line that wouldn't let me go back. The sky was painted gold. Cottonwood trees breathed in the breeze like they too had finally stopped bracing. I passed the restaurant, the one where I waited alone on my birthday. The one that had once meant something. I didn't look twice. Some places lose their power when the people inside them lose meaning. Edith's care home was quiet, still. The kind of quiet that feels chosen, not forced. The woman at the front desk didn't ask why I was there or why I carried a lopsided cake with a crooked candle. She just buzzed me in. Some stories walk through the door already written. Some moments don't need to be explained. I found Edith in the common room near the wide front window. The light wrapped around her like warmth held in glass. She was flipping through one of those oversized magazines, pictures big enough for tired eyes, the kind that fills time, not thought. She looked up slowly, blinking into a smile. "Well," she said, folding the magazine into her lap. "Would you look at that? Happy belated birthday to me," I said, holding up the cake like a trophy. She chuckled. "You're the only person I know who brings her own cake to her own party." "With one candle," I added. "And no guest list." "I'd say one guest is enough," she replied. I set the cake down on the table between us, pulled the small lighter from my purse, the one I usually used for incense for frayed shoelaces. I lit the candle. There were no speeches, no photos, just light and breath, and the quiet clarity of choosing to be here now. Apparently, now even the candle had to carry symbolism. I lit it anyway. The flame trembled weakly in the last stretch of sunlight. We didn't sing, didn't make a wish. We just shared a crooked slice of too sweet cake and sipped coffee that had been sitting on the warmer too long. It was bland, comfortless, but neither of us seemed to mind. Sometimes comfort isn't in taste, it's in presence. And in that quiet, I felt more seen than I had in years. "I never had a daughter," Edith said after a while, settling deeper into her chair, the magazine folded neatly in her lap. "But if I had, I think I would have wanted one like you. Stubborn, not soft. The kind of girl who doesn't wait to be offered a chair, just drags one over and sits down." I looked at her, held those words like a faded photograph. The kind you want to press between pages and keep safe from the years. "If I'd had a mother like you," I said softly, "maybe I wouldn't have spent so many years learning how to exist in rooms where no one saved me a seat." We didn't cry, didn't even blink hard. Some griefs don't spill. They settle, quietly, permanently. By the time I left, the sky had shifted to that particular shade of lavender Colorado, saves for the space between late summer and early fall. The road home felt different. Not shorter, lighter. My phone buzzed twice in the cup holder, but I didn't reach for it until I parked in front of my building. A voicemail. Velma. I pressed play. Her voice hoarse and cracking. You've made your point. This family is breaking because of you. I didn't let her finish. I deleted the message mid-sentence before she could add my name to another list of things she claimed I had ruined. The guilt wasn't mine anymore, and I wasn't borrowing it back. In the mailroom, a plain envelope waited legal stationery. I didn't need to open it to know what it said. Still, I tore it open. Inside was confirmation. Signed, notarized, final, binding. My name no longer appeared on any shared property. No more joint accounts. No more inherited obligations disguised as love. Every thread had been cut. Clean. Irreversible. Upstairs, I turned on the lamp beside the bookshelf. I lit the same candle I had used with Edith, not for ceremony, but for truth. I needed light to mark this moment. Then I sat down and pulled out a blank note card. I wrote one sentence slowly, like a vow. Happy birthday, Eileen. You were worth showing up for. I placed the card beside the only photo I still kept, me and Dad ankle-deep in a lake, upstate, fishing rods in hand, both of us grinning at something I couldn't even remember anymore. But we looked happy. He wore that old ball cap no one was allowed to touch. I was barefoot. Then I opened my laptop, created a new folder, new file. I titled it, What I Owe Myself. Chapter 1. I didn't write a speech, no declarations, no justification. I typed slowly, deliberately, not to prove anything, but because for the first time I could. Because the story was mine now, entirely. And as the words began to fill the page, I felt it. A truth that settled into my bones like warmth after a long freeze. I was free. Sunday arrived before sunrise. I didn't need an alarm. My eyes opened to quiet. No buzzing phone, no urgent pings, no one pulling on the edge of my peace. The stillness wasn't absence anymore. It was earned, and it didn't feel like loneliness. It felt like space. Mine. Barefoot, I stepped across the cool hardwood to the kitchen. Each step felt more grounded, less rehearsed. I brewed a cup of coffee bold the way I like it and leaned against the counter, listening to the hum of the machine. Outside, a bird sang, a reminder that the world hadn't ended. It had simply shifted. No alerts, no reminders. Just breath. Just now. Coffee in hand, I walked to the patio and did something I hadn't done in months. I slid the door open all the way. The morning air slipped in gentle, honest. It didn't sting. It didn't ask anything of me, and I didn't flinch. I took a long sip of coffee and watched the sky shift, letting the light unfold slowly across the rooftops. I wasn't waiting anymore. Not for them. Not for redemption. Not for a seat that was never mine. For once, I wasn't preparing for war. I wasn't writing replies in my head. I wasn't fighting to belong. My phone buzzed from the other room, and I didn't move. I didn't rush. I finished my coffee, rinsed the mug, dried my hands slowly before checking the phone. A voicemail from Curtis. I hesitated, then played it. No greeting, no warmth, just his voice clipped and tired. Mom's freaking out. The mortgage is overdue. Again. The bank's calling. You knew this would happen when you pulled out. No accountability. No pause. Just blame thrown like a hot coal in my direction, as if I were supposed to catch it and apologize for the burn. But this time, I felt nothing. No guilt. No shame. Just distance, the healthy kind. I forwarded the message to my attorney. The subject line read simply, "Do not engage." A few minutes later, another ping. The family group chat, untouched for over a week, lit up. Velma. We didn't raise you to be cold. Zia, like always, followed. You're still family. But family doesn't abandon. I stared at the screen. Cold? No. They hadn't raised me to be cold. They had raised me to be compliant, to stay quiet, to bend, to say thank you when they closed the door in my face. This wasn't abandonment. It was preservation. This wasn't rage. It was relief. For the first time in my life, I wasn't breaking ties out of anger. I was choosing peace over performance. I placed the phone face down and walked into the bedroom. The closet door was already half open. I pulled it wide. There, still taped to the inside wood panel, was the photo of Dad and me. Slightly worn now, the corners curling, his arm around my shoulder. That easy, proud smile I used to cling to like a compass. For a long time, I believed that photo was proof that I'd been loved once. But now I saw it differently. It wasn't proof I'd been claimed. It was proof of who I'd always been when no one was watching. I took a sticky note, wrote 5 words, "You didn't raise me to break." Then underneath, "You taught me how to hold." I pressed it beside the photo, smoothed it down, walked back to the desk. I opened the document I had started the night I spoke with Edith. The title still read, What I Owe Myself, Chapter 1. I let the blinking cursor wait. Let the quiet speak first. Then I typed Lesson 1. You are allowed to leave the table when love is no longer being served. I reread it once. Then I smiled. Clicked save. Leaned back. I opened a new browser tab. Searched for flights. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because I wanted to arrive. Somewhere new. Somewhere I didn't have to carry the rusted definitions of who I used to be. There would be no dramatic exit, no social media goodbye, no final appeal for understanding. Just a quiet decision. A booked seat. A tomorrow that belonged to me. And that right there, that was the freedom I had been chasing. Not a house, not approval, not the fragile illusion of reunion. But this, the soft click of a door opening in the morning. The taste of coffee without anxiety. The stillness that didn't need explanation. The message I could delete without trembling. The voice that could say, this isn't where I stay anymore. I didn't feel lonely. I felt whole. And wherever I was going next, I wasn't bringing their silence with me. Only my voice. And that was enough. Sometimes walking away isn't weakness. It's wisdom. I spent years trying to earn a place at a table that was never meant to hold me. And the moment I stood up, I realized I had the strength to build my own. If you're listening, and you've ever felt like the background character in your own life, I want you to hear this. Your worth isn't defined by who claps for you. It's in how you choose to clap for yourself. Now I'm curious. Have you ever had to let go of people you once called family, just to finally find peace? Tell me your story in the comments. Let me know where you're watching from. And if this video reached something in you, drop a 1 in the chat, or tell me why it didn't. I welcome every voice here. And if you believe in healing and strength and stories that speak to the heart, subscribe. There's more truth where this came from.